The engagement party at Rosewood Manor was everything my sister Megan had dreamed of: crystal chandeliers casting warm light over elegantly dressed guests, servers circulating with champagne and canapés, live piano music drifting across the perfectly manicured gardens visible through floor-to-ceiling windows. The venue was undeniably stunning, which made it the perfect backdrop for Megan to demonstrate exactly where I stood in the family hierarchy. "Emma, there you are." Megan's voice carried that particular tone of forced enthusiasm she used when she wanted witnesses to her generosity. "I've been looking everywhere for you. Come meet Derek's groomsmen properly." I followed her across the marble-floored reception room, past clusters of well-dressed guests holding crystal glasses and making the kind of polished small talk that comes naturally to people who've never worried about money. Megan looked radiant in her designer cocktail dress, her engagement ring catching the light as she gestured expressively, clearly in her element as the center of attention. "Everyone, this is my sister Emma," she announced to a group of impeccably groomed men in expensive suits. "Emma, these are Derek's college friends, all very successful, very eligible bachelors." She laughed prettily. "Well, most of them anyway." The introductions were politely awkward, with Megan helpfully providing commentary about everyone's careers and accomplishments. There was Brad the investment banker, Marcus the surgeon, James the tech entrepreneur, and several others whose impressive credentials Megan rattled off with obvious pride. "And Emma works in, what is it again, Em? Something with computers." "Software development," I said quietly. "Right, software development. Very technical, very practical." The way she said practical made it sound like she meant pedestrian. "Emma's always been the studious one in the family. Very focused on her work." Brad nodded politely. "What kind of software do you work on?" "Mostly back-end systems for hospitality management. Database architecture, booking systems, that sort of thing." "Oh, how interesting," Marcus said with the kind of polite disinterest reserved for conversations about other people's less glamorous jobs. Megan beamed as if I'd just confirmed something important. "See? Very technical. Emma's always been good with those detail-oriented things that would drive me crazy. I'm more of a big-picture person myself." She linked her arm through Derek's as he joined our group, her fiancé looking every inch the successful marketing executive in his perfectly tailored suit. "Derek, honey, I was just introducing Emma to your friends. Tell them about the wedding planning. Emma's been so helpful with all the practical details." Derek smiled warmly, though I caught the slight glance he exchanged with Megan. "Emma's been incredible. Really on top of all the logistics and vendor coordination. Very organized." "It's what she's good at," Megan said fondly. "All those computer skills translate well to spreadsheets and schedules. Emma made the most detailed seating chart I've ever seen." The group chuckled appreciatively, and I realized I was being positioned as the helpful sister who handled the boring details while Megan focused on the glamorous aspects of wedding planning. It wasn't entirely inaccurate. I had helped with vendor coordination and timeline management, but the way she framed it made it sound like I was some kind of glorified wedding assistant. "Speaking of the seating chart," Megan continued brightly, "Emma, I wanted to let you know I made a small change. I moved you to table 12 instead of table 8. Table 8 was where the immediate family and wedding party were seated. Table 12 was considerably further from the head table." "Is there a problem with table 8? I asked. "Oh no, not at all. It's just that table 12 is going to be so perfect for you. I seated you with Derek's cousin who's also in tech and a few other people who I think you'll really connect with. Very smart, very practical people." Her bridesmaids had materialized beside her, Sophia, Jessica, and Chloe, all looking like they'd stepped out of a magazine in their coordinated designer outfits. They exchanged knowing glances that suggested they'd been part of this seating chart discussion. "It's actually better than the family table," Sophia added helpfully. "Less pressure to make small talk with all the relatives asking about your love life and career plans." Jessica nodded enthusiastically. "And you won't have to sit through all those boring speeches about childhood memories and embarrassing stories. Plus, table 12 is closer to the bar," Chloe pointed out with a laugh. "Always a strategic advantage." Megan looked pleased with this support from her bridesmaids. "See? It's really much more comfortable for you. Table 8 is going to be all Derek's business associates and my sorority sisters. You know, very social, very intense conversation. Table 12 will be much more relaxed." I understood perfectly. Table 12 was where they put the family members who didn't quite fit with the important guests. The ones who might not know how to make appropriate conversation or might feel uncomfortable in such elevated social company. That sounds thoughtful, I said calmly. I knew you'd understand. Megan beamed. You've always been so practical about these things. Never one to make a fuss about protocol or positioning. Derek's groomsmen looked mildly uncomfortable with the conversation, but none of them seemed inclined to comment on the family dynamics playing out in front of them. The musicians shifted to a new piece, and several couples moved toward the small dance floor area. Oh, and Emma, one more tiny thing, Megan continued, her voice taking on that carefully casual tone that usually preceded something I wouldn't like. I know we discussed you giving a speech at the rehearsal dinner, but I've been thinking about the timeline, and it might be better to keep the speeches to just the immediate wedding party and parents. You know, to keep things moving smoothly. Sophia nodded supportively. Rehearsal dinner speeches can drag on forever if you're not careful. Better to keep it tight and focused. Exactly, Megan agreed. And honestly, public speaking isn't really your thing anyway, is it, Em? You've always been more comfortable behind the scenes, making sure everything runs smoothly. That's your strength. I felt something settle in my chest, not hurt exactly, but a kind of resigned understanding of how this evening was going to play out. I was being systematically repositioned from sister to helpful background figure, from family member to logistics coordinator. That makes sense, I said evenly. Perfect. I knew you'd be understanding about it. Megan squeezed my arm affectionately. You're the best, really. I don't know what I'd do without you handling all the practical stuff. The conversation moved on to other topics, honeymoon plans, wedding dress details, reception timeline. I listened politely, occasionally asked questions, played the role of the supportive sister who was grateful to be included even in a diminished capacity. The venue is just incredible, Jessica was saying, gesturing around the opulent reception room. Megan, how did you even find this place? Oh my God, it was such a process, Megan replied, clearly delighted to tell the story. We looked at probably 20 different venues. Most of them were either too small, too tacky, or just didn't have the right feeling. But the moment we walked into Rosewood Manor, we both knew it was perfect. It must have cost a fortune, Brad commented, looking around appreciatively at the crystal chandeliers and marble floors. Derek laughed. Let's just say it's a good thing the marketing business has been going well. This place definitely doesn't come cheap. But it's worth every penny, Megan added quickly. This is once in a lifetime, you know? We wanted something that would be absolutely perfect, something that would make a statement about who we are as a couple. Chloe nodded approvingly. It definitely makes a statement. Very elegant, very sophisticated. Very exclusive. Exactly. Megan's eyes lit up. That's what drew us to it. Rosewood Manor only hosts about 30 events per year. They're very selective about their clientele. You can't just book this place, they have to approve you first. Like a country club application process? Marcus asked with interest. Sort of, Derek explained. They want to make sure their events maintain a certain standard. The right kind of people, the right kind of celebration. It's not for everyone, but that's what makes it special. I felt several pairs of eyes glance in my direction, and I understood the subtext perfectly. Rosewood Manor was the kind of place where people like Derek and Megan belonged, successful, sophisticated, socially connected. It wasn't the kind of place where people like me with our practical jobs and modest lifestyles would typically find ourselves. The waiting list is usually 2 years, Sophia added, but somehow Megan managed to get a date just 8 months out. We got incredibly lucky, Megan said modestly. There was a last-minute cancellation and the venue coordinator remembered us from our initial consultation. She called to offer us the date and we jumped on it immediately. Good thing you could afford to jump on it, James commented with a grin. I looked into venues like this for my sister's wedding. The deposits alone are more than most people's annual salaries. It's definitely an investment, Derek acknowledged. But like Megan said, this is once in a lifetime. We didn't want to compromise on our dream wedding just to save money. The conversation continued in this vein, with various guests sharing stories about expensive weddings they'd attended, exclusive venues they'd heard about, the importance of sparing no expense for such a significant life event. I contributed appropriately, asking interested questions and making supportive comments, while internally calculating exactly how much this evening was costing and wondering how Derek and Megan were actually financing it. Emma's wedding will probably be much more intimate, Megan said at one point, the word intimate clearly being diplomatic language for small and modest. She's always preferred quieter celebrations anyway. Nothing wrong with a budget-conscious approach, Sophia added helpfully. Lots of people have beautiful weddings without going overboard. Absolutely, Chloe agreed. You can do amazing things with creativity and careful planning. Very Pinterest-worthy on a smaller scale. I realized they were all trying to be encouraging about my theoretical future wedding being significantly less elaborate than what we were currently experiencing. They meant well, but their assumptions about what I could afford and what kind of celebration would be appropriate for someone like me were becoming increasingly clear. The important thing is finding someone who appreciates you for who you are, Jessica added warmly. Someone who doesn't need all the bells and whistles to be happy. Right, Megan agreed. Emma's always been more about substance than style anyway. Very grounded, very authentic. Again, the way she said authentic made it sound like a polite way of saying unsophisticated. And honestly, Derek added, not everyone needs this level of celebration. This works for us because we're both pretty social, we have large networks, we enjoy entertaining. But I can see how someone more private might prefer something completely different. The group nodded thoughtfully as if they were all imagining my eventual modest wedding in a community center or public park, with homemade decorations and a small guest list of equally practical, down-to-earth people. Well, I think it's wonderful when people know their limitations and plan accordingly, Marcus said diplomatically. Much better than trying to keep up appearances and going into debt for one day. Exactly, Megan exclaimed. Emma's always been so sensible about money. Never one to overspend or try to impress people. Very responsible. I smiled and nodded, accepting their collective assessment of my character and my future prospects. Around us, the party continued, servers refilling champagne glasses, guests mingling and laughing, the live piano creating an elegant soundtrack to the evening's festivities. I should probably go check on something, I said finally, excusing myself from the group. Of course. Megan said brightly. Thanks for being so understanding about everything, Em. You're the best. I made my way across the reception room, past the elaborate floral arrangements and gleaming surfaces, toward the restroom area. The venue was even more impressive from this angle, soaring ceilings, original artwork, handcrafted architectural details that spoke of serious money and refined taste. My phone buzzed with a text message, then another. Then it started ringing. Emma Chen speaking. Miss Chen, this is Catherine Williams from Rosewood Manor Events Coordination. I'm terribly sorry to bother you this evening, but we have an urgent situation with the Hartwell wedding scheduled for next Saturday. The bride's family has requested some significant modifications to their contract. They want to extend the reception by 3 hours and add a second bar service, but they're also asking us to waive the additional fees. It would set a concerning precedent for our other clients. I glanced back toward the party, where Megan was holding court with her bridesmaids and Derek's groomsmen, everyone laughing at something she'd just said. What's the total additional cost they're trying to avoid? Approximately $18,000 for the extended hours, bar service and additional staffing. They're claiming we should absorb the costs as a courtesy, since they're such valued clients. Have we had problems with the Hartwells before? This is actually the third time they've requested contract modifications without payment adjustments. Our staff is concerned about setting expectations that will continually accommodate requests without appropriate compensation. I agree. Deny the modification request unless they're willing to pay the full additional fees. If they have a problem with that, they're welcome to find a different venue for next Saturday. Thank you, Ms. Chin. I'll communicate that to them immediately. Oh, and the Miller wedding coordinator called about their December booking. They want to confirm the wine selection for their tasting next week. Have Susan handle that. She knows their preferences better than I do. Perfect. Sorry again for interrupting your evening. I hung up and turned to find Megan standing behind me, having apparently followed me away from the party. Who was that? She asked curiously. It sounded very official. Work, I said simply. On a Saturday night? At my engagement party? She looked genuinely confused. What kind of software development emergency requires you to work weekends? Before I could answer, a woman in an elegant business suit approached us, looking somewhat flustered. "Excuse me," she said politely. "I'm looking for Emma Chin. I was told she might be in this area." "That's me," I said. "Miss Chin, I'm Catherine Williams, the events coordinator we just spoke with on the phone. I wanted to follow up in person about the Hartwell situation, and also to personally apologize for the interruption. I know how much you value your privacy during personal events." Megan was staring at both of us with growing confusion. "It's fine, Catherine. You made the right decision calling me directly rather than trying to handle it yourself. The Hartwells have been testing boundaries for months." "I agree completely. I'll make it clear that the additional fees are non-negotiable." Catherine paused, glancing at Megan. "I hope you're enjoying your sister's engagement party. The event is going beautifully." "Wait," Megan interrupted, looking between Catherine and me. "How do you two know each other? Why is the venue coordinator calling Emma directly?" Catherine looked surprised by the question, then glanced at me uncertainly. "Should I?" she began. "It's fine," I said calmly. "Megan, Catherine is the events coordinator for Rosewood Manor. We work together regularly on various matters." "Work together how?" Megan pressed. "You said you do software development. What does that have to do with wedding venues?" Catherine's expression shifted to something like confusion mixed with discomfort. "I'm sorry, I think there might be some misunderstanding. Miss Chin doesn't work in software development. She owns Rosewood Manor." The color drained from Megan's face. "She what?" "Miss Chin purchased the property 3 years ago," Catherine continued, apparently unaware of the bombshell she was dropping. "She's been instrumental in elevating our service standards and expanding our event offerings. We wouldn't be half as successful without her vision and investment." Megan's mouth opened and closed soundlessly like a fish out of water. "I should get back to the party," I said gently. "Catherine, thank you for handling the Hartwell situation so professionally. I'll review the Miller wine selections on Monday." "Of course, Miss Chin. And again, my apologies for the interruption." Catherine walked away, leaving Megan and me standing in the marble-floored hallway, the sounds of the engagement party drifting from the reception room. "You own this place?" Megan whispered. "I own this place. But you said you do software development." "I do software development. For hospitality management systems. Specifically, I develop and maintain the booking and event management software for all my properties." "All your properties?" "Rosewood Manor, the Grandview Hotel, Lakeside Conference Center, the Metropolitan Event Space, and about a dozen smaller venues throughout the region." Megan leaned against the wall, looking like she might need the support. "This is impossible," she said weakly. "It's really not. You never asked what I actually do for work, Megan. You decided I was some kind of low-level tech worker and never bothered to get any details. But you live in that small apartment. You drive that old Honda. You dress like..." She gestured vaguely at my simple black dress. "I live in a perfectly nice apartment that's close to my office. I drive a reliable car that's paid for. And I dress appropriately for someone who spends half her time visiting construction sites and meeting with contractors." I paused. "Also, none of those things have anything to do with how much money I make or what I own." "How much?" she began, then stopped herself. "How much what? How much money do I make? How much are my properties worth? How much did your engagement party cost me to host?" Megan's eyes widened. "Cost you? Megan, you booked this venue 8 months ago with a last-minute cancellation story." "There was no cancellation. I held the date for you the moment you mentioned you were engaged. You've been planning your dream wedding at my venue with my staff, using my resources. But we paid the deposit. We signed a contract. You signed a contract for exactly half the actual cost of an event this size. I've been covering the difference." Megan slid down the wall until she was sitting on the floor, her designer dress pooling around her. "Why didn't you tell me? When you decided I was the practical sister who handles logistics. When you moved me to table 12 because I wouldn't fit in with your important guests. When you canceled my speech because public speaking isn't my thing. When you assumed I'd have a small budget wedding because I'm so sensible about money." I sat down on a nearby bench, looking at my sister who was having what appeared to be a complete mental breakdown on the marble floor of the venue she hadn't known I owned. For 3 years, you've treated me like the family member you have to invite but don't particularly want around. You've made assumptions about my life, my success, my worth without ever actually asking about any of it. But I didn't know, she protested weakly. You didn't want to know. There's a difference. I kept my voice gentle but firm. You decided who you thought I was and never bothered to find out if you were right. What about Derek? Does he know? Derek knows exactly who I am and what I do. He's been incredibly professional and respectful about the whole situation. He even tried to pay full price for the venue, but I insisted on giving you the family discount. Family discount, she repeated hollowly. 50% off, plus I covered all the upgrade costs for the premium flowers, the expanded bar service and the live music. Your dream wedding is costing about $47,000. You've paid $12,000. Megan buried her face in her hands. Oh God, what have I done? You've planned a beautiful engagement party and what I'm sure will be a lovely wedding. You've also spent several years making it clear that you consider me an embarrassment to the family who needs to know her place and accept her limitations. I never said that. You seated me at table 12, Megan. With people like me, who would be more comfortable away from your important guests. You canceled my speech because public speaking isn't my thing. You've spent this entire evening talking about how practical and sensible and grounded I am, as if those were polite ways to say I'm boring and unsuccessful. She looked up at me with tears in her eyes. What happens now? What do you mean? Are you going to cancel the wedding? Are you going to make us pay the full amount? Are you going to kick us out? I considered the question seriously, watching my sister sitting on the floor of my venue, finally understanding that the family dynamic she'd constructed was based on completely false assumptions. I'm going to do what I've been doing for the past 8 months, I said finally. I'm going to make sure you have a beautiful wedding at a price you can afford, because you're my sister and I love you. Even after everything? Even after everything. Megan started crying harder. I'm so sorry, Emma. I'm so incredibly sorry. I assumed. I was so wrong about everything. Yes, you were. Can you forgive me? I can. But things are going to have to change, Megan. You can't treat people like they're worth less than you based on assumptions and superficial judgments. You can't decide someone's value based on what car they drive or where you think they should sit at your wedding. I know you're absolutely right. And you're going to have to deal with the fact that table 12 is actually the best table in the house, I added with a slight smile. Perfect view of the gardens, closest to the dance floor and yes, strategically located near the bar. I specifically requested that seating arrangement. She looked up at me with surprise. You wanted table 12? I wanted to sit with Derek's cousin Marcus. He's actually a brilliant software architect and we've had some fascinating conversations about database optimization. Much more interesting than listening to your sorority sisters discuss their skincare routines. Despite everything, Megan laughed. You're not upset about the seating chart? I'm not upset about the seating chart. I'm upset about the assumptions behind the seating chart. She nodded slowly, wiping her eyes carefully to preserve what was left of her makeup. What do I tell people? About you, about all this. You tell them the truth. That your sister owns the venue and you're grateful she wanted to host your wedding. What about Derek's friends? They think you're some kind of low-level tech worker. Derek's friends can think whatever they want. The ones worth knowing will adjust their assumptions. The ones who can't get past their preconceptions about what success looks like probably weren't worth impressing anyway. Megan struggled to stand up in her cocktail dress and I offered her a hand. Are you ready to go back to your party? I asked. Are you ready to be introduced properly? I smiled. I've been ready for that for 3 years, Megan. The question is whether you're ready to have a sister who doesn't fit into the neat little box you built for her. She took a deep breath, smoothing her dress and checking her reflection in one of the ornate mirrors lining the hallway. I'm ready, she said. And Emma? Thank you. For everything. For the venue, for the discount, for not canceling my wedding when you had every right to. For being so much better than I deserved. You're my sister, I said simply. This is what family does for each other. We walked back toward the reception room together, toward the party full of people who were about to learn that sometimes the most successful person in the room is the one who doesn't need to prove it to anyone. Behind us, Catherine was handling the evening's logistics with her usual professionalism, ensuring that my sister's engagement party continued flawlessly at my venue, supported by my staff, covered by my money. Just another Saturday night in the hospitality business, with the added complexity of family dynamics and a long overdue conversation about assumptions, respect, and what it really means to know your place in the world.
"This house is mine now," Amanda said, tapping her long nails on my kitchen counter. "We've talked to our lawyer, and since Marcus is your only heir, we're moving in. You should start packing." I looked up from my crossword puzzle, eyeing my daughter-in-law's smug face. At 65, I'd seen enough in life to know greed when it stood in front of me in designer clothes. "Is that so?" I said calmly, picking up my tea. "And what does Marcus think about all this?" Amanda's smile grew, like a cat that just caught a mouse. "He agrees. This house is too big for one person. You're getting older, Sarah. We're doing this for your own good." I gently placed my cup down, thinking of the day my late husband James and I first stepped into this house, 30 years ago. We'd raised Marcus here, turned every room into a memory. Even though James had been gone 5 years, I still felt him in the garden he planted, the stairs he fixed, the stained glass windows he loved. "The deed," I said, opening a drawer beside me. "You should read it before you start planning your new curtains." Amanda frowned. "What about it?" "This house belongs to the family." "Exactly." I slid the paper toward her. "Take a close look, especially at the part about the historical society." She read it, her smile fading. This can't be right. The house is protected. And you're the head of the board." "For the last 3 years," I said, sipping my tea. "James and I set this up before he died. No one can force me to leave or change anything here without approval. This house is part of the city's history now." Amanda's face turned red. "But Marcus is your son, your only child. And I'm protecting our home," I replied, standing up. "James and I didn't just build a house. We built a legacy." She gripped the deed so tightly her knuckles turned white. "Marcus won't let this stand. When he finds out—" "When I find out what?" Marcus asked, walking into the kitchen. "What's going on?" Amanda quickly turned sweet. "Your mother's being unreasonable. She gave the house to some historical group instead of keeping it in the family." Marcus looked confused. "Mom, is that true?" "It's still in the family," I said gently, "but now it's protected for the future, just like your father wanted." "But we were going to—" Amanda began, but Marcus cut her off. "Going to do what?" "You told me Mom needed help with the house. You didn't say anything about taking it." Amanda said nothing. I almost felt bad for her. Almost. "Your father and I thought this through, Marcus," I said. "This house is where you grew up. It's full of stories, memories. It's the fireplace where you hung your Christmas stocking, the window where you used to read, the garden where your dad showed you the stars." Marcus's eyes softened. Then a hint of guilt showed up too. "Mom, I didn't know. I'd never agree to this if I had." "I know, sweetheart," I said. Marcus had always had his father's kind heart. Amanda slammed the deed down. "This isn't over. There has to be a way to fight this." I calmly put the deed back in the drawer. "You're welcome to try. But maybe check who's on the legal team for the Historical Society first. Isn't your father part of it, Amanda? I'm sure he'd be very interested to hear your plans for one of the city's landmarks." Her face turned pale. Her own father had helped us set this up years ago. "You planned this," she whispered. "I planned to protect my home," I said. "You planned to take it from someone you thought was weak." Marcus put a hand on my shoulder. "I'm sorry, Mom. I should have seen this coming." "It's all right," I said. "But you two need to talk about your future, in your own house." They left, Amanda stomping out, Marcus trailing behind. I went back to my crossword puzzle. The house creaked around me, peaceful and warm. Outside, the wind chimes James hung in the garden tinkled softly. "Well, my love," I said into the quiet kitchen, "I think that went just as we hoped." The next morning, Amanda sent a flood of angry texts. Some were threats, others were fake apologies. I read them while tending to James's roses in the garden. Their scent filled the air and helped me stay calm. "You're tearing this family apart," one message said. "Marcus is devastated." But I didn't believe that. I'd seen Marcus's face yesterday, not heartbroken, just finally seeing things clearly. Sometimes, loving your children means letting them figure things out on their own. The garden gate creaked, and I looked up to see my sister Eleanor walking toward me. She looked worried. I saw Marcus at the grocery store, she said as she sat down beside me. He looked awful. What's going on? I set my gardening tools aside and sighed. Eleanor had been my support ever since James passed away. Amanda tried to take the house yesterday, I told her, watching a butterfly land on one of the roses. She told me to start packing. Eleanor let out a sharp laugh. Did you show her the deed? I did, I said, smiling at the memory of Amanda's shocked face. But I'm worried about Marcus. He didn't know what she was planning. He's always been too trusting, Eleanor said gently. Just like James. We sat in silence for a while, watching the butterflies. The house stood behind us, peaceful and strong, just like it had always been. She's not going to give up, Eleanor said after a while. Amanda isn't the type. I know, I replied. That's why I called the Historical Society this morning. We're having an emergency meeting tomorrow to talk about strengthening the house's protection. Eleanor smiled. You're always a few steps ahead. James would be proud. The rest of the day was quiet, but in the evening, the doorbell rang. I looked through the stained glass panels and saw Marcus standing alone on the porch. Hi, Mom, he said when I opened the door. He looked tired and uncertain. Can we talk? I led him into the kitchen, the heart of the home. I made tea, James's favorite blend, and Marcus sat at the counter, running his fingers along the old wooden edge like he used to as a child. Amanda and I had a big fight last night, he said after a moment. She said some things about you and about the house. I didn't know she felt that way. I set the mug in front of him. His hands were shaking a little. People show us who they are, I said gently. Sometimes we just don't want to see it. She called you manipulative, said you planned all this to keep control. He looked up at me. But that's not true, is it? This was Dad's dream too. Tears filled my eyes. Your father loved this house, not just for what it was, but for what it stood for. Family, history, a place to come home to. When he got sick, protecting it became our last project together. Marcus looked around the kitchen at the old copper pots, the AGA stove, the window seat where he used to do homework. I remember Dad teaching me about the wood in these cabinets, he said. Amanda wants to rip them out and put in something modern. And what do you want, Marcus? I asked. He didn't answer right away. He held his tea and thought. I want to understand why I didn't see this sooner. Why I let her convince me that changing everything was the same as improving it. Love can blind us, I said softly. Your dad and I had to remind each other sometimes what really mattered. She's talking about divorce, he whispered. She says I'm choosing a house over her. I reached out and held his hand. It looked just like James's now, strong, worn, with the same little scar on his thumb from when he was young. It's not about choosing a house, I said. It's about respecting what matters to the people we love. Your father spent hours fixing this place, not because he loved old houses, but because I did. Marcus squeezed my hand. I saw the truth hit him. And Amanda wants to tear it all down just because she didn't get her way. You have to see that for yourself, I said. No one could tell you. He stood up and hugged me tight, like he did when he was little. I'm sorry, Ma. I should have understood sooner. You do now, I said. That's what matters. When he pulled back, there was something new in his eyes, strength, clarity, purpose. I should go, he said. Amanda and I have a lot to talk about. I walked him to the door. The stained glass cast soft colors on his face. This will always be your home, Marcus, I said. That's what your father and I wanted most. He smiled, really smiled. I know, Mom. I finally know. As I watched him walk through the garden gate, past the roses James had planted, I felt a quiet presence beside me. We did good, my love, I whispered. We did good. 3 months passed, each day bringing subtle changes. Marcus moved out of this house with Amanda, taking only what he brought into the marriage. He didn't tell me where he was staying at first, but Eleanor let slip that he rented a small apartment near the university where he taught. Amanda, true to form, didn't go quietly. She tried everything, threatening legal action, spreading rumors in our social circle, even attempting to contact the Historical Society board members directly. But like many bullies faced with firm boundaries, she eventually ran out of steam. One crisp autumn morning, as I was organizing old photographs in the library, the doorbell chimed. Through the wavered glass, I saw Marcus standing there, looking more like himself than he had in years. I signed the divorce papers today, he said as I let him in. He didn't sound sad, just relieved. It's finally over. I led him to the library where afternoon sunlight streamed through the bay window, illuminating dozens of photos spread across James' old desk. Marcus picked one up, himself at about 7, sitting on his father's shoulders as they worked on restoring the front porch. "I remember this day," he said softly. "Dad let me hold the paintbrush by myself for the first time. I got more paint on us than the railing." He didn't mind one bit. I smiled, remembering James's laughter as paint dripped down his neck. "He said it was worth it to see how proud you were." Marcus set the photo down carefully, then turned to face me. "I've been thinking, Mom, about the house, about everything you and Dad built here." He took a deep breath. "I want to learn. About preservation, about the history, all of it." My heart swelled. "Your father would love that." "Actually," Marcus continued, a familiar gleam in his eye, "I already started. I've been taking workshops at the Historical Society, learning about Victorian architecture. They're looking for new board members, and I thought—" I pulled him into a hug, cutting off his words. Over his shoulder, I could see James's favorite reading chair, where he used to sit and dream up new projects for the house. Our son was finally ready to carry on his legacy, not out of obligation, but genuine love. The next few months brought changes I never expected. Marcus threw himself into learning everything about historical preservation, spending weekends helping me with house projects just like he used to do with his father. We restored the back garden together, uncovering paths James had laid decades ago. The Historical Society welcomed him warmly, especially when they realized he shared his father's passion for preservation. He brought fresh ideas to the board, suggesting educational programs for local schools and community outreach events. One evening, as we sat in the garden watching the sunset paint the old house in shades of gold, Marcus turned to me with a thoughtful expression. "You know, Mom, I understand now why you and Dad protected this place the way you did. It's not just about the house itself. It's about preserving something meaningful, something that tells our family's story." I reached over and squeezed his hand. "That's exactly what your father used to say." "I heard Amanda got engaged," he said after a moment, "to some developer who specializes in modern high-rises. Are you okay?" I asked gently. He smiled, genuine and warm. "Better than okay. I'm exactly where I should be." Looking at him then, I saw so much of James, the quiet strength, the gentle heart, the appreciation for things that carry meaning beyond their surface value. But I also saw something uniquely Marcus, a wisdom earned through learning from his mistakes. Later that night, after Marcus left, I stood in the entrance hall, taking in the house that had sheltered so many chapters of our family's story. The original woodwork still gleamed, testament to James's careful restoration. The stained glass cast familiar patterns on the floor, unchanged by time or circumstance. "You were right all along, my love," I whispered to James's presence that always seemed strongest in these quiet moments. Our son just needed time to find his way home. As if in response, a warm breeze carried the scent of roses through the open window. James' roses, now tended by his son's hands. Some things change, I realized, but the things that matter most remain, growing stronger with each generation that chooses to preserve them. In the end, what Amanda never understood was that this house was never just about property or possession. It was about legacy, about family, about the stories we choose to protect and pass on. Marcus understood that now, and in doing so, he found not just his inheritance, but his true home. "I used your college fund for my dream house." Amanda's voice dripped with satisfaction through my phone speaker. "You're never going back to finish your degree anyway. Time to grow up and face reality." I gripped my kitchen counter, feeling the cold marble under my fingers as I processed her words. The $800,000 education fund my grandparents had left me, gone. Or so she thought. "Interesting," I replied, my voice steady. "And how exactly did you manage that?" "My name is Sophie Parker, and at 32, I'd spent the last decade working as an accountant while slowly building my way toward my dream of finishing my medical degree. What my sister-in-law, Amanda, didn't know was that I'd been expecting this move ever since she married my brother James 3 months ago. "Oh, it was easy," she laughed, clearly disappointed by my calm reaction. "James still had access to the account from when your grandparents first set it up. All I needed was his signature. The house is gorgeous, by the way. Much better use of the money than some silly dream of becoming a doctor." I could picture her smug expression, probably admiring her reflection in one of her oversized designer mirrors. Amanda had swept into our lives like a hurricane 6 months ago, convincing my brother she was his soulmate after just 2 weeks of dating. I'd seen right through her act, but James was too enchanted to listen. "Well, thanks for letting me know," I said, opening my laptop. "I hope you enjoy the house." "That's it?" Amanda's voice rose with frustration. "No crying. No begging. Come on, Sophie, where's the drama?" I ended the call without responding and pulled up my email. There it was, the confirmation I'd been waiting for from my attorney. The transfer Amanda and James had attempted had been blocked. The funds already moved to a new, secure account 2 weeks ago. My grandmother had always said, "Trust your instincts, but verify your accounts." She'd built her own accounting firm from nothing, teaching me everything she knew about protecting assets before she passed. When Amanda started asking suspiciously detailed questions about my college fund at Sunday dinners, I knew it was time to put those lessons to use. I dialed my attorney's number, my hands steady despite the anger still simmering beneath the surface. "Hi, Linda. I just got the call we were expecting. Has everything been documented?" "Every attempt they made to access the account has been recorded," Linda confirmed. "The timestamps, the forged documents, everything. Your brother's signature appears to have been coerced. Do you want to proceed with pressing charges?" I thought about James, my sweet but naive older brother. He'd always protected me growing up, standing up to bullies and helping me through our parents' messy divorce. Now he was married to someone who made those school-year bullies look like amateurs. "Not yet," I replied. "Let's wait for them to realize the transfer failed. I want to see what Amanda does next." After hanging up, I walked to my home office and opened the bottom drawer of my filing cabinet. Inside was a thick folder labeled Grandma's Letters. I pulled out the most recent one, written just weeks before she passed away 2 years ago. "My dearest Sophie," it read, "I'm leaving you this money because I believed in your dream. Medicine isn't just a career for you, it's a calling. Don't let anyone tell you it's too late or too hard. And most importantly, don't let anyone take this opportunity from you. You're smarter than they think. Love, Grandma." I traced her signature with my finger, remembering how she taught me to analyze handwriting patterns when I was just 12. That knowledge had helped me spot the inconsistencies in James's signature on the transfer documents Amanda had submitted. My phone buzzed again. A text from James. "Hey sis, Amanda's really excited about the house we're buying. I know the money was for your school, but you've got a good job already. Family should help family, right?" I felt a familiar ache in my chest. James had always been terrible with money, jumping from one get-rich-quick scheme to another. Amanda had clearly figured that out within days of meeting him. Another text came through. "The realtor needs the money by Friday. You're not mad, are you?" I started typing a response, then deleted it. Let them figure out on their own that their plan had failed. Sometimes silence was the best reply. My computer pinged with an email notification. The medical school admissions office confirming my interview for next week. I'd already been quietly completing prerequisites at night while working full-time. The money from my grandparents wasn't just sitting in an account. It was an investment in my future, one I'd been carefully planning for years. I opened my blinds, looking out at the city skyline as the sun set. Amanda thought she had won. That she'd crushed my dreams with a few forged signatures and a smug phone call. She had no idea that she'd just walked into a trap of her own making. My grandmother's words echoed in my head. Sometimes the best revenge is letting people think they've beaten you, right up until the moment they realize they've beaten themselves. Friday was only 3 days away. I wondered what excuse Amanda would give the realtor when the money didn't appear in her account. More importantly, I wondered how she would explain to James why she tried to steal from his sister. I picked up my phone and texted Linda, "Send me everything you've documented. I want to be ready when this all falls apart." Then I turned back to my medical school application, a small smile playing at my lips. Amanda thought she was destroying my dream. Instead, she was about to learn a valuable lesson about underestimating the quiet ones in the family. Friday morning arrived with a storm of text messages from Amanda. "The bank says the transfer failed. What did you do? You think you're so clever, don't you? James is devastated. How could you do this to your own brother?" I sipped my coffee, reviewing the documented evidence Linda had sent over. Everything was there. Amanda's multiple attempts to access the account, the forged signatures, even recordings of her calls to the bank where she tried to impersonate me. My phone rang. "James. Sophie, we need to talk." His voice was tight with anxiety. Amanda says there's some kind of problem with the transfer. There is, I replied calmly. Would you like to know what really happened, or do you want to keep pretending your wife didn't just try to steal my education fund? Silence on the other end. Then it wasn't stealing. I signed the papers. We're family. Did you actually sign them, James? Or did Amanda forge your signature after showing you different documents? More silence. I could almost hear the pieces clicking into place in his mind. Come over, he said finally. Please, I need to understand what's going on. An hour later, I sat in the living room, my laptop open to display the evidence. Amanda paced behind the couch, her designer heels clicking against the hardwood floors she'd insisted they install last month. As you can see, I explained, pulling up the forged documents, these signatures don't match your usual handwriting, James. The bank's fraud department spotted it immediately. You had no right to move that money. Amanda burst out. It was just sitting there while you play pretend about medical school. We needed it. Needed it? I raised an eyebrow. For what? A 5-bedroom house you can't afford? More designer clothes? Or was it to cover the gambling debts you've been hiding from James? Her face went pale. James turned to stare at her. What gambling debts? I pulled up another document, a credit report Linda had obtained during our investigation. Your wife has been busy, James. 3 maxed-out credit cards, 2 personal loans, and regular withdrawals at the Golden Palace Casino. Did you wonder why she was so interested in accessing my college fund? Amanda's composure cracked. You had no right to look into my finances. Actually, I had every right. You tried to steal my money. Did you really think I wouldn't protect myself? That I wouldn't notice when you started asking questions about my account details? James sat heavily on the couch, his face ashen. Amanda, is this true? The gambling. It's not what you think, she stammered. I had a system. I was going to win it all back. The house was going to fix everything. We could have remortgaged it when we needed to. I watched my brother's world crumble around him. Part of me wanted to comfort him, but he needed to see the truth for himself. How much? He asked quietly. What? How much do you owe? Amanda's silence was damning. Over $200,000, I answered for her. And that's just what we've been able to trace. James put his head in his hands. I could see his shoulders shaking. Get out, he whispered. Baby, please, Amanda started. Get out. James roared, standing up. You tried to steal from my sister. You forged my signature. You've been gambling away our savings. Get out. Amanda grabbed her purse, mascara running down her face. Fine, but don't think this is over. I'll find a way to fix this. The door slammed behind her. James collapsed back onto the couch. I'm so sorry, Sophie, he whispered. I should have listened when you said something felt off about her. I wanted to believe someone could love me that much that quickly. I moved to sit beside him, pulling out an envelope from my bag. Here, I said softly. You'll need this. What is it? Contact information for a good divorce lawyer. Linda recommended her. And proof that Amanda has been planning this from the beginning. James looked through the papers, his face growing harder with each page. Text messages showing Amanda bragging to friends about marrying into a family with money. Bank statements showing transfers to offshore accounts. Casino receipts dating back to before their wedding. She never loved me, did she? He asked, his voice small. No, I replied gently. But that's not a reflection on you. She's a con artist, James. She's done this before. His head snapped up. What? I pulled out the final document, a police report from 3 years ago. Another marriage, another theft, another devastated family. She disappeared before they could press charges, I explained. Changed her name and moved here. Started fresh with a new target. James was quiet for a long time, processing everything. Finally, he looked at me. The college fund, it's safe. I nodded. Grandma taught me well. The money was moved to a secure account weeks ago. Amanda's transfer attempts were blocked and documented. We have everything we need to press charges. Do it, he said firmly. Press charges. All of it. I'll testify, provide whatever you need. She needs to be stopped. I hugged my brother, feeling him shake with suppressed sobs. I'm sorry, he whispered again. I'm supposed to protect you, not put you in danger. Hey, I pulled back to look at him. You protected me plenty when we were kids. Let me protect you this time. My phone buzzed. A text from Linda. The police were ready to move on our evidence. Amanda's previous victims had been contacted and were willing to testify. What happens now? James asked. Now, I replied, we make sure Amanda can't do this to anyone else. And then, I have a medical school interview to prepare for. For the first time that day, James smiled. You're really going to do it? Become a doctor? That's what the money was for. That's what Grandma wanted. He nodded, wiping his eyes. She'd be proud of you, not just for catching Amanda, but for never giving up on your dream. I squeezed his hand. She'd be proud of you too for being brave enough to face the truth. Outside, thunder rumbled as the sky darkened. Somewhere in the city, Amanda was probably trying to figure out her next move, unaware that her game was finally over. But here, in this moment, something broken was beginning to heal. 2 months later, I stood in front of my bathroom mirror, adjusting my white coat. My medical school interview had gone perfectly, just as my preparation with the secured funds had allowed. But today wasn't about my future as a doctor. Today was about justice. Ready? James asked from the doorway. He looked better now, the shadows under his eyes finally fading. The divorce papers had been filed the day after Amanda's schemes came to light. Ready, I confirmed, grabbing my bag. The courthouse was packed, but not just with us. 3 other families were there, Amanda's previous victims. She used different names each time. Amanda Wilson, Amy Walker, Anna Wells. But her strategy had always been the same. Marry quickly, locate assets, forge documents, drain accounts. You don't have to do this, I told James as we took our seats. Linda can present the evidence without your testimony. He shook his head. No, I need to face her. We all do. Amanda was led in by officers, her designer clothes replaced by generic court attire. She'd been arrested at the airport 3 weeks ago, attempting to flee with a fake passport. The smug smile I remembered from her phone call was gone, replaced by a look of desperate calculation. Her eyes widened when she saw the other families. This wasn't part of her plan. The proceedings moved quickly. Linda presented our evidence methodically, the forged signatures, the gambling debts, the pattern of fraud across multiple states. Each family stood to testify, sharing nearly identical stories of trust betrayed and lives nearly ruined. When it was James's turn, his voice was steady. She made me believe I'd found true love, he said. Instead, I nearly helped her steal my sister's future. The money she tried to take wasn't just cash in an account. It was a grandmother's legacy, a dream of becoming a doctor, a future of helping others. Amanda doesn't just steal money, she steals hope. I squeezed his hand as he returned to his seat. Finally, it was my turn. Unlike Amanda's other victims, I was fortunate. I began. My grandmother taught me to protect myself, to trust my instincts, to document everything. The money she left me wasn't just for education. It was a lesson in standing up for what's right. Today isn't about revenge. It's about making sure Amanda can't destroy any more families. The judge's verdict was decisive. Guilty on all counts. 5 years in prison, restitution to all victims, no possibility of early release. You think this changes anything? Amanda spat as they led her away. You're still just playing at being a doctor. You'll fail and I'll be out before you finish your first year. I smiled, thinking of my grandmother's words about letting people think they've won. Actually, I replied calmly, I start medical school next month. Your attempt to steal my dream just motivated me to work harder. So thank you, Amanda. You taught me that sometimes the best revenge is succeeding despite those who tried to stop you. Outside the courthouse, James turned to me. I found her ring, he said. The engagement ring I spent 3 months' salary on. It's fake, just like everything else about her. Sell it, I suggested. Use the money to start fresh. He shook his head, pulling out the ring. No, I want you to have it. Sell it and add it to your school fund. Turn one more piece of her lies into something good. That evening, I sat in my office, looking at my grandmother's photo. The acceptance letter from medical school lay on my desk, along with the latest statement from my secured education fund. My phone buzzed, a text from James. Thank you for never giving up on me, even when I couldn't see the truth. I smiled, thinking about how different things could have been if I hadn't listened to my grandmother's lessons about protecting myself. Amanda had thought she was taking advantage of a naive dreamer, too busy studying to notice her schemes. Instead, she'd encountered someone prepared, protected, and unwilling to let anyone steal her future. I picked up my white coat, running my fingers over the embroidered name. Sophie Parker, medical student. Sometimes the best victories aren't just about keeping what's yours. They're about showing others that it's never too late to stand up for yourself, to pursue your dreams, to trust your instincts. And as for Amanda, she'd have 5 years to think about the fact that the quiet one she'd underestimated was now on her way to becoming Dr. Parker. While she sat in a cell, her own dreams of easy money finally permanently out of reach.